In this video, we're going to take a look at a clip from an interview from Frank Turek, where he's interviewing Pastor Josh Howerton, who's a pastor of a megachurch in Texas. Josh Howerton is no stranger to controversy, but we're not going to get into any of that. What we're going to get into is that he was interviewed last week by Turek talking about how Christians should be involved in politics. And I want to play one clip where Howerton lays out how he thinks the church relates to the wider society.
The other thing I would say is the New Testament says the church is supposed to be, quote, the pillar and buttress of the truth in the world and in society. So this is really important. There's one of my favorite Bible teachers that I learned from. He used the analogy that the church's role in society is to be the immune system of society. So this is a great analogy. I love this. He said, in the same way, hey, nobody has ever died of HIV or AIDS. Nobody has ever died of that. What HIV and AIDS do is they take out the immune system, and once the immune system is gone, the body can die of anything. When the church goes silent on the issues that are pressing in politics, culture, society, that society now has AIDS. The immune system is down, and now that society is susceptible to die of any destructive ideology.
So the idea is if conservative evangelicals don't vote for Donald Trump and very loudly proclaim their fidelity to Donald Trump, then society will get AIDS. So here's the passage that Howerton refers to. In classic proof texting fashion, Paul's writing here to Timothy, one of the pastoral epistles, and he says, if I'm delayed, you will know how people ought to conduct themselves in God's household, which is the church of the living God, the pillar and foundation of the truth. Okay. And then he goes on to explain what that truth is, that Christ appeared in the flesh, was vindicated by the Spirit, was seen by angels, was preached among the nations, was believed on in the world, was taken up in glory. This is considered an early creedal confession that was circulating already in the church in the first century. And so what Paul is saying here is that one of the things the church does is it proclaims the gospel. This is simply the gospel, right? The church is proclaiming the gospel, is a pillar and foundation of truth to proclaim the gospel to the world. But what Howerton assumes by proof texting this verse, just citing that the church is the pillar foundation of truth, is that there is no basis to govern society at all if there is not a Christian church active within that society, which is so that, I mean, as he says very clearly, he says the illustration is that the church is the immune system of society. So if the evangelicals do not proclaim the truth of support for Donald Trump as they understand it, because if you watch the whole interview with Frank Turek, it's very clear that what Howerton was saying is that it is important for evangelicals to support Donald Trump because Kamala Harris is evil. That's what he says. He doesn't use their names, but it's clear which one he's referring to as being evil versus just imperfect. Donald Trump's imperfect. Kamala Harris is evil. Then the church needs to proclaim Donald Trump. And if they abdicate that witness to support Donald Trump, if they abdicated that witness in the election, then they would be withdrawing from society. Society would lose its immune system, and society would have AIDS and would die. It's just an incredible claim. It's an incredible claim to make. And he cites 1 Timothy 3 as support, validation for that claim, when 1 Timothy 3 says nothing like that. In fact, one of the most consistent teachings throughout Scripture and throughout church history, and just by empirically looking at the world, is that there is what Christians would refer to as common grace and general revelation, and that societies can function quite well without specific Christian revelation. Just look through history. Look at a country like Japan right now, is still less than 1% Christian, and yet Japan has done very well as a society, has one of the highest standards of living in the world. That's just one example. There are endless examples, and there are endless examples throughout history. The claim that if evangelical Christians did not support Donald Trump, the society would get AIDS. the equivalent, a societal equivalent of AIDS, that the immune system offered by the Christian evangelical church would be withdrawn, society would get AIDS and would die, would cease to exist, is just manifestly delusional and offensive. But that is the degree of rhetoric that one finds invoked among evangelical supporters of Donald Trump on the far right. And that is what is happening to American evangelicalism today, that they have these delusions of grandeur that not only are they justifying support for Donald Trump, which is one thing, okay, but then they go on and say that if you don't support Donald Trump and if you don't support the Republican Party and if you are not an evangelical in right relationship with us, then you have no bearing in sustaining society. And if we withdraw and you're just left behind, society will get AIDS. It's incredible. It's incredibly offensive and frankly deeply delusional.